Some people think that players who seemingly show loyalty to a particular company's fighting games like every single fighting game that company puts out. Of course, this isn't the case across the board. Contrary to what some people on the outside may assume and believe, not every SNK fan is enamored with Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. There are those fans who are strictly KOF fans or just happen to like that series more and are already thinking about its future. For me personally, there are a couple of things that the next KOF will have to do to get and keep my intrigue. One such thing is getting creative with the roster. I can't believe I have to say this, but for clarity's sake, no, I'm not encouraging SNK to get rid of characters like Terry, Mai, Kyo, Athena, and some of the other KOF no-brainers. However, SNK really needs to shake things up. There are actually a decent chunk of characters who I feel have the potential to help make the next KOF actually shatter expectations. Whether it's their unique fighting styles that can make for a more fun and exciting roster, or their potential to push the game's story in an interesting direction, these are my picks for KOF characters who are being wasted. Mei Lee Jinju. Let's go on and get it out the way. If you follow me long enough, you saw this coming. I won't deny my bias here, but I do feel like SNK is squandering Mei Lee's potential. One of the most unique characters to come from the school of Kim, and arguably one of KOF's most unique characters overall, it's a shame that Mei Lee has only had 3 playable mainline KOF appearances, with only one of them being canon. I made a video going over Mei Lee's history in KOF and tried to dig into the mystery of why it seemed like SNK had forgotten about her. Well, clearly they haven't completely forgotten about her, as her master Kim did mention her in his KOF 15 interview. Mei Lee would have been a wonderful inclusion for KOF 15. Performing pretty well on a couple of DLC fan polls, SNK dropped the ball in not including her as such. Some will argue that she shouldn't be brought back because of her rather difficult gameplay, but I argue that we need characters like her, and even Angel. At least for me, playing super difficult characters will give you a unique experience in learning and playing such characters, and they serve as something of a cool opportunity for those looking for more of a challenge with their fighting games. Here's to hoping for a playable return in KOF 16. Seeing she's linked to Kim, a Fatal Fury original, her popping up in City of the Wolves wouldn't be completely out of the question, but I find it highly unlikely. Shen Wu. We were so close to having the whole band back. Ash and Elizabeth made highly anticipated returns on the KOF 15 main roster. Duo Lan popped up in Season 2 of the game. Shen Wu was just limited to cameos. This was a total shame, seeing that I could see Shen Wu as a popular pick if he were in KOF 15. He would be yet another straightforward, powerful brawler similar to the likes of Yashiro. However, Shen Wu's brand of self-styled violent boxing was always explosive and fun to play and watch. Another character who also performed very well on DLC fan polls, Shen just didn't make it into the game. I'd like to think that a KOF 16 return is inevitable for him, seeing where the story went in KOF 15. With Ash seemingly starting an alliance with Naj, of all people, Shen could easily return with Elizabeth in duo. We shall see. Adelheid. Perhaps the writing was on the wall when the son of Rugal got snubbed from KOF 13. While you do see him in the game's story mode, Adelheid was originally set to be a playable character in said game. Ever since then, we haven't really had nor have seen much of him. We have seen his father make a comeback recently, so perhaps there will be another chapter in the story of the Bernstein family. Granted, you could argue that perhaps Adelheid's time came and went, as he was quite essential to the Ash saga. I mean, he was considered this saga's, quote, other protagonist. I think he has quite a lot more to offer to KOF's future, if given the chance. The US sports team. All I've got to say is, I hope SNK understands that people actually like these characters. Granted, I personally only like Heavy D, but all 3 of these guys have their fans. All of them definitely bring something unique to the table in terms of playstyle and presence. As corny as I think Lucky is, you won't find any other characters summoning pillars of energy with freaking basketballs of all things. Brian Battler, I think, was just more of a fleshed out take on the fighting football star compared to Johnny Maximum. I admire Brian's rough 'em tough 'em brawling approach that definitely lines up more with the nature of football without being too hokey. Sorry, I just can't get over J Maximum kicking a football apparently made from his cheek. It's so silly to me and not really in a charming way. Then we have Heavy D, who I won't deny is also one of my favorites, so perhaps there's some bias here. However, similar to how we all know about the Kyokugen-ryu practitioners having their own take on that style, Heavy D would bring more of a burly, aggressive take on boxing compared to Vanessa, who is more agile and mobile. The crazy thing is, this team could be included whether they play a small role or a big role in the story. The team is basically a wild card that I'm sure many KOF fans would be happy to see in a modern game. Kenso. You may be wondering, why include Kenso? He's been in a bunch of KOF games. True as that isn't why he's being wasted. Kenso is being wasted because SNK has seemingly dropped the Dragon Spirit arc. Just when it seemed like the storyline was about to elevate him from just being Athena's biggest fanboy, everything just stopped. Not only did KOF seemingly stop Kenso's push, but come KOF 15 he was pushed out of sight, only really being mentioned a few times in the game. While I liked the shakeup that gave us Team Superheroines, I didn't like the fact that it pretty much ended up sidelining Kenso. He didn't even get the Hind treatment wherein, despite not being a playable character, his story was still progressing through cameos. With all of this, if you ask me, SNK is dropping the ball with Kenso's potential. Speaking of the Dragon Spirit arc, Ron. Another character who you could argue that their time has passed, seeing he was mostly active during the Nest and Ash sagas. Ron is such an interesting character that it's a total shame he has never been a standalone playable character in the KOF series. I see a rather dark yet bizarre necromancy-based fighting style for Ron that would definitely stand out and be fascinating to see. Ron could possibly make his debut seeing the return of his son in 15, and perhaps if the aforementioned Kenso returns in KOF 16, that could be an avenue to Ron making his playable debut, as he is quite fascinated and knowledgeable about the Dragon Spirit. Lin. Lin is easily a top 5 pick for the most underrated, most unique, and most underutilized KOF characters. He's got a cool look and a highly distinctive set of powers and gameplay. Lin is just easily one of the coolest characters, and I'm surprised he wasn't utilized more. Although the Hazoku storyline kicked off during the Nest saga and was arguably more prominent at the time, key figures in it still had a presence going into the Ash saga, with Duolon arguably getting the most shine time. Sadly, Lin was only limited to cameos in the Ash saga. In the current saga, the Hazoku storyline has kinda sorta fizzled out, with the most prominent figure from it being, yep, you guessed it, Duolon. Again, given his uniqueness and his rather long absence from being a playable character, SNK totally would not have gone wrong including Lin in KOF 15. Also, another means by which I feel Lin is wasted is the fact that he could build a bridge for some other characters to make their playable debuts. In his case specifically, I could see him bringing in and leading a trio accompanied by 2 of the other 4 Devas. Not those 4 Devas. Hell, it would even be better for this idea if KOF 16 miraculously decided to go back to quad teams. Of the 4 Devas, Lawan, not her, Lawan. Yes, her. She is allegedly the strongest, and it would be quite interesting to see her fighting style and powers, which are currently unknown. SNK could easily keep the Hazoku storyline going with Duolon's return, and with my idea here, you've already gotten an interesting team for KOF 16 consisting of a character that hasn't been playable in quite some time, and some characters making their debuts. Sounds good to me. Jun Hoon. Like Meili Jinju, Jun Hoon also got a mention in Kim's KOF 15 interview, as Clemens Bellamy asked about him. Apparently, Jun was brought to tears and quite happy to see that Kim survived that excruciating training that seems to trigger him into some crazed, dramatic rants. Jun also makes a cameo in his friendly rival's KOF 15 ending, and while we can't gauge too much from this scene, there is a possibility that the guy is doing alright. As you may remember, he had an accident that sidelined him, and the debuting Meili Jinju would fill in for him in KOF 2001. More than enough time has passed, and Jun definitely has a means of being on a playable roster in a future KOF. He's yet another character with a unique and sharp take on Taekwondo, and perhaps he can definitely be a strong supporting character as Kim continues his story. Theo. So, you all remember Shiki, right? Samurai Spirit Showdown Shiki? Say that 5 times fast. Remember how she's one of the 3D era Sam Show characters who got massively pushed after debuting? After gracing both of the Samsho 64 games, SNK brought Shiki into a couple of 2D games: SNK Gals Fighters, SVC Chaos, Neo Geo Battle Coliseum, and of course, Samsho 7. For the most part, it seems SNK keeps characters that made their debuts in 3D games within a series away from the series' 2D games. There are some other characters that have pulled this off. Like in the case of KOF, Rock made his first playable appearance in Maximum Impact and would finally make his playable debut in the 2D mainline series as DLC in KOF 14. However, as I'm sure you know, Rock had already been an established character long before his Maximum Impact debut. Also, Shiki wasn't the only character that debuted in Samsho 64 that also made it into Neo Geo Battle Coliseum, as Asura would also be there, getting some 2D screen time. Unfortunately, despite how cool he is, he never made it into the 2D Samsho games. When Shiki made it into the Samsho 7 main roster, she broke that trend. Now you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with Fio? Simply put, SNK should have definitely pushed Fio the same way they pushed Shiki. The fact that they got a Metal Slug character in a KOF game and fleshed them out into a really fun, full-on character and not just a striker is commendable. Similar to the idea I proposed with Lin, Fio could definitely help lead in and usher in a Metal Slug team for KOF. Given how many players felt the Samurai team was an awkward fit for KOF 15, I'm sure a team whose combat revolves mostly around firearms may not be that pleasing to some people for a couple of reasons. Still, seeing such a team would definitely be a treat given how KOF has gathered fighters from a variety of SNK games, not just limited to its fighters. If the Metal Slug team idea still isn't that pleasing to the point where SNK gets cold feet, I could see Fio being a solo entry, maybe DLC, or perhaps being a part of an Another World style team. Because again, the general consensus of the Samurai team was quite polarizing to generally not so good outside of Nakoruru, who, need I remind you, had already been established as a key character in the New Age saga. Numerous Maximum Impact originals. Speaking of polarizing, that very word seems quite befitting of the KOF Maximum Impact series. The series has quite a number of KOF fans who are quite critical of it, and it also has its stalwart defenders even to this day. The series brought a new flavor to the KOF series that most people likely didn't see coming beforehand. KOF going 3D, it got an English dub, had an immensely underrated soundtrack, and of course introduced fresh new faces and storylines alongside established characters. To the frustration of KOF Maximum Impact lovers, many of said fresh new faces have unfortunately been denied any playable screen time opportunities past the series, which has laid dormant for years. Again, there are quite a few that SNK could give the Shiki push. Your mileage may vary on which Maximum Impact originals would be the best option. Some will choose their favorites just because, and then perhaps there are those who would try to consider who could seemingly mesh in with the mainline KOF story. On that second point, there are a few characters that I think could satisfy that criteria. For the sake of brevity, I'll just mention two. First, there's Chillhop. Her backstory is pretty simple and straightforward, being yet another protege of Kim, and one with a secret weapon-like reputation if you consider her master's words. Having a link to such a veteran character pretty much makes Chillhop an easy fit for KOF. Seeing that Kim is a Fatal Fury original, yet again, and seeing City of the Wolves is going further into the future, I'd argue she could even fit in that game. My second personal choice is Zhao Lan. Like Chillhop, she has strong ties to an established original character in her older half-brother Duo Lan, who also mentioned her in his KOF 15 interview, hence further establishing her place in the mainline KOF timeline. She's also a member of the Hazoku, which again is a storyline that I think SNK could do more with in the future. Zhao Lan would definitely bring something unique to mainline KOF in terms of playstyle with her unique stances. Sure, this alone would more than likely make her a more difficult character to play, but again, I believe that such characters still have a place on rosters as they always tend to stand out. There are obviously many more characters to consider that have just been limited to Maximum Impact. Seeing that another entry in this series is highly unlikely and SNK has no qualms about including the soundtrack in KOF 15's jukebox, they should go the extra mile and bring some of those characters over to the mainline series. Marlene. You want to talk about a character that has several storylines where SNK could fit them in? Look no further than Marlene. Given what went down in KOF 15, SNK could unite the high school girls team with the stalwart Athena still being around and the surprise comeback of Hinako Shijo. It'd be a nice callback to an old team, except in this case, we'd see the return of a pretty cool character we haven't seen in a minute. Another obvious idea would be to resume the feud with the Kyoku Genryu team. Now that that team has finally gotten to a new point in their story with Ryo finally claiming the mantle of Mr. Karate 2, why not have the anti-Kyoku Genryu team run it back with them? I know all three of them are feeling sore after King bodied them due to getting tilted over yet another attempt from the family to hook her up with Ryo. Still waiting for that to be official. Speaking of the AOF team, their KOF 15 ending displayed the key members becoming reinvigorated by Mr. Karate 2's words of encouragement. On the other hand, I'm pretty sure Marlene, Eiichi Kisaragi, and Kasumi Todo have been looking for revenge ever since King soloed them. With both teams basically having their own reasons for strengthening and bettering themselves, the story basically writes itself. Sure, some people who are lore fans may instantly think that the anti-Kyoku Genryu team doesn't stand a chance, seeing that, again, King practically soloed them. The silver lining is the fact that, yet again, we get a trio of characters we haven't seen in a while, and that's usually a plus. Diana and Foxy. I won't keep you long for this one, seeing that I pretty much think this is a lock for the next KOF. On one hand here, you got Foxy, who we haven't had as a playable character since the Nest Saga. On the other, you have Diana, who has yet to make a standalone, full-on playable debut in a mainline KOF game. She's usually more of a support character for Kula, popping up in several animations here and there. We know how Foxy fights, and she has quite a smooth yet somewhat of an unorthodox take on fencing, but aside from a couple of support attacks with Kula, we don't know too much about Diana's fighting style. I think it's about time SNK pulls the trigger on that. Of course, the reason why I strongly think we will see these two return is the Team Cronin ending in KOF 15. K4, Crow 9, and Angel return Kula to Diana and Foxy, and then the two groups go their separate ways. SNK needs to make this trio a team in KOF 16. Do not have Kula go back to the K- team. Not just yet. Give this trio some time to sizzle, and in doing so, not only do we bring back yet another familiar face we haven't seen in a long time in Foxy, but we also have the other familiar face finally established as a standalone fighter, which could definitely add something special to KOF. And that's my list. What KOF characters do you think SNK is wasting potential with? Leave a comment below, and also give a special shout out to Onyx Blade for recommending this topic. Make sure to check out his channel, and also make sure to check out his book Forbidden. And until the next video, I am the Chris Lotus, signing off. You all take care of yourselves, be safe out there, be cool to each other, and stay cool by staying hydrated in the heat. And in general, see ya.